A frayed pocket watch chain dragged across Eli Hart's palm. A dry rasp, metal shivering like it wanted to tick but couldn't. Mara Keene stood in his doorway, clutching her coat shut against the storm. Snow needled past her boots. Her breath hitched. She pressed the broken watch into his hand before speaking, a plea disguised as cold brass. Eli lifted one blanket from his cot, set it around her shoulders. Two strangers, one winter, and a kindness about to echo far beyond that night. The wind pressed against the cabin like a tired animal trying to lie down. Eli Hart sat alone at the small table, hands wrapped around a tin mug that had gone cold long before he realized it. He lifted it anyway, out of habit. Nothing warm lived in that cup. Nothing warm lived in him anymore. A loose shutter tapped against the siding, each knock a hollow reminder of the life he no longer shared with anyone. The cabin answered with its own voice, the floorboards shifting, the rafters settling, the walls sighing in winter exhaustion. Eli barely heard it. Silence had become his only companion, and even silence had started to feel like a burden. He pushed back from the table, the chair legs scraping over pine planks scarred by years of neglect. His days had a shape. Wake, work, avoid memories, sleep, repeat until the world forgot him entirely. He'd grown comfortable with the idea. He reached for a lantern to refill it, but his hand paused in midair. A faint metallic rattle drifted in from the porch. Small, quick, uneasy. Not the wind, not an animal. Eli straightened, every old instinct tightening like a rope drawn through calloused hands. He moved toward the door with careful steps, each board underfoot giving a soft groan of warning. The rattle came again, sharper this time, the sound of a chain brushing wood. Eli unlatched the door. Cold surged in, fierce enough to bite his lungs. Snow spiraled across the threshold in frantic curls, and standing in the middle of that storm was a woman. She held her coat closed with one hand. Her other hand was extended toward him. In her palm lay a pocket watch with a broken face and a frayed chain. The chain dragged across her glove as she lifted it. A dry, scraping whisper, the same sound he'd heard before. Her voice was thin, almost carried off by the wind. "Please," she said. Eli didn't answer. He didn't know how to answer people anymore. But he recognized the look in her eyes, someone who had run out of road, out of warmth, out of choices. A look he had seen in his own mirror for too many years. For a moment, they stood like two strangers suspended in the breath of winter. Her hand trembled. The watch trembled with it. Eli stepped aside, slow, reluctant, but he stepped aside. The woman crossed the threshold. Snow swallowed the sound of her footsteps as the door closed behind her. Caleb Rourke woke to the sound of ticking. Slow, uneven. The pocket watch lay on the table beside the cold lamp, its cracked glass catching a faint gray from the window. Beyond it, three shapes slept on his floor. One thin woman, two small children, all wrapped in his one good blanket. His breath showed white when he sat up. The fire in the stove had sunk to a dull red, barely breathing. Wind pressed at the boards, making them groan. The only steady thing in the room was that stubborn tick. He rubbed the ache from his neck and stared at the blanket, at the bare strip of mattress he'd left himself. Fool thing to do, he thought, handing a stranger the only warmth he had left. Yet he had done it. Last night, in the snow, with Christmas 2 days off and no one to share it with but ghosts. The woman stirred. Anna Ward. She blinked against the hard morning, lips blue at the edges, hair loose from its pins. Her boy, Thomas, curled against her side, one hand clutching the blanket like it might disappear. Lily, the little one, had wormed her way right up against the stove, nose almost touching the iron. Caleb rose, boots whispering on the plank floor. The boards complained under his weight. He moved to the stove, swung the door open. A rush of colder air washed his face. The embers glowed weakly, like they were thinking about quitting. Not yet, he muttered. He laid in kindling with practiced hands, snapped it to size across his knee. Each crack echoed too loud in the cramped room. He reached for the coffee tin. Empty. Just the smell of yesterday clinging to the rim. He set it back without a word and fetched more wood instead. Outside, the yard was a sheet of frost. He stepped out, every board creaking like a warning. The wind bit his cheeks and tugged at his coat, trying to get inside. By the time he came back in with an armful of logs, Anna was sitting up, the blanket still wrapped tight, her shoulders hunched. The boy had woken. He stared at Caleb like a wary colt. Lily slept on, thumb in her mouth, dark curls stuck to her forehead. "Morning," Caleb said. The word felt big in the small room. Anna nodded once. "Morning," she answered, voice rough. He dropped the wood beside the stove, fed 2 pieces in. The flames licked up slow, then faster. A soft roar grew, filling the silence. The room began to shift from gray to brown, shapes gaining color. On the table, the pocket watch ticked on. Caleb's eyes slid to it. He hadn't meant to notice it so much. Silver case worn smooth, chain coiled neat beside it like a sleeping snake. Crack across the face, right through the 12. It was her watch. She had set it there before sleep, fingers resting on it a moment too long. Like a prayer, like a guard. He set a pan on the stove and dropped in yesterday's biscuits. Dry as fence posts, but heat would soften them some. Grease popped in the old iron. Thomas flinched at the sound. Caleb caught it, filed it away with the bruised shadow on the boy's jaw he'd seen under lantern light last night. "Food in a minute," Caleb said. He wasn't good with children. Never had to be. His own had gone to the ground before he'd learned how. Anna drew the blanket tighter around them. "You didn't have to take us in," she said. He shrugged. "Storm wasn't asking my opinion." Silence settled again. Not empty, just crowded with things not being said. The stove crackled. The watch ticked. Wind combed the eaves with long, low fingers. Caleb turned the biscuits. Smell of warmed flour and old lard crept into the room. Thomas's face followed it, eyes tracking the pan like a starving dog. "How long since you ate?" Caleb asked. Anna hesitated. "Yesterday," she said. Her gaze slid off his, like a stone skipping away from deep water. Caleb knew a lie when he heard one. "Sit at the table," he said. "Both of you." They moved like they weren't sure they were allowed. Chairs scraped the floor. Lily woke at the noise, blinking big, dark eyes. She shivered once, then crawled after the warmth of the others. Caleb divided the biscuits. One for each, half for himself. He poured water from the kettle into tin cups. It wasn't coffee, but it was hot, and it was something. Thomas picked up his biscuit with both hands. He took a bite too big, choked, coughed so hard his eyes watered. Caleb's hand moved before he could think. A palm on the boy's back, firm, steady. Thomas's small frame shook under his touch. "You're all right," Caleb said quietly. The boy's cough eased. His breathing slowed. He didn't pull away from Caleb's hand right away. That surprised them both. The watch ticked louder in the pause, like it had leaned in to listen. Anna reached across the table and brushed crumbs from Lily's chin. Her sleeve slipped back. Purple marks climbed her wrist like fingers that wouldn't let go. Caleb saw. Anna saw him see. She tugged the cloth down, eyes dropping to the watch. "You have anyone looking for you?" he asked. The question hung between them, heavy as a rope. Anna's jaw tightened. Her fingers closed over the watch. The ticking dulled under her palm. "No one that matters," she said. It was too quick, too flat. He heard the shape of fear inside it. He thought of the sheriff's words, spoken low at the edge of the street last night. "Careful, Rourke. Some widows trail more than grief." Caleb scraped his plate clean with the last piece of biscuit. He let the subject fall, for now. After breakfast, the house felt too small for 4 souls and all their shadows. Caleb shrugged into his coat. "Woodpile's low," he said. "Boy can help me." Thomas straightened like he'd been called to stand. Anna opened her mouth to object, then closed it. "Stay close to him," she told Thomas. Her hand found the watch again, thumb rubbing the crack. Tick, tick. Caleb felt that sound between his shoulder blades as they stepped out into the yard. The cold hit hard. Sky pale as tin, breath pluming from man and boy. Frost clung to the fence rails like white moss. Caleb set the axe upright in the chopping block. "You hold this wood," he said, placing a log for Thomas to steady. Hands flat, fingers back. "You lose one, I ain't got spares." Thomas swallowed and nodded. His hands shook, but he set them where he was told. Caleb swung. The axe bit clean. The crack rang out sharp across the still land. Thomas flinched again, but he held. "Good," Caleb said. Again. They fell into rhythm. Place. Swing. Crack. Each log split into waiting halves. The sound bounced off the barn, off the empty corral. Reminded Caleb of another time, another set of small hands trying to copy his movements. Hands he'd buried. He shook the thought off like snow. At the edge of hearing, hooves drummed faintly on hard ground. Far off, a road beyond the rise. Then gone. He watched the horizon a moment too long. "Someone coming?" Thomas asked. "Not today," Caleb said. He hoped. By midday, their breaths were ragged clouds. A good stack of split wood waited by the door. Caleb clapped frost from his gloves. Thomas's cheeks burned red, eyes brighter than they'd been at dawn. "You did all right," Caleb said. Thomas's mouth twitched, the beginning of a smile he wasn't used to letting out. "Thank you, sir," the boy said. The "sir" sounded strange in his own yard. Strange and not entirely unwelcome. Inside, warmth greeted them first. Then the smell of something new. Anna had found beans, maybe the last of his stores. They simmered in a pot, soft sounds tapping inside the boil. Lily sat near the stove, humming a tune under her breath, a wobbly little thing that kept losing its way. The house looked different. Blanket folded, table wiped. His late wife's Bible moved from the floor to the shelf where it belonged. Anna stood by the window, mending a tear in the very blanket he'd given her. The watch rested on the sill beside her, ticking steady as her needle. "You didn't have to do all that," Caleb said. Anna didn't turn. "It was dirty," she answered, "and I had hands." He couldn't argue the truth of it. His gaze drifted to the mantel where a faded photograph leaned behind a chipped cup. Two faces there. A woman, a small boy, smiles caught from another life. Anna's eyes followed his. She set the needle down. "Your family?" she asked softly. "They were," he said. The words landed dull and heavy, like they'd fallen too far to bounce. Silence again, not empty this time, just careful. The beans bubbled. Lily hummed. The watch ticked in the window, counting out a beat no one danced to. Anna's fingers rested near it. "I'm sorry," she said. He gave a short nod. People were always sorry. It didn't change the ground. "What about yours?" he asked. He didn't know why he asked. Maybe it was the way the house didn't feel quite so hollow with extra voices in it. Maybe it was the watch, steady and patient, like it knew something he didn't. Anna looked out at the white fields. Her throat worked. "My husband's gone," she said. That watch was his. It's all I could carry that they couldn't take. "Who?" They were hung in the air like smoke. Before he could press, the wind slammed against the side of the house. The wall shuddered. Lily yelled. Thomas's hand shot to his mother's sleeve. Anna flinched hard, eyes wide, breath sharp. Caleb stepped toward the door, every muscle waiting for a knock that didn't come. Just wind, just winter. For now, he turned back to them. "You'll stay," he said, "till this cold passes. You can help with chores. We'll make do." Anna let out a breath she'd been holding all morning. "Thank you, Mr. Rourke," she said. Her hand brushed the watch. Tick, tick. The sound seemed softer now, less like a warning, more like a promise to keep time just a little longer. That night, when the sky went black and the snow started again, they gathered close around the stove. Fire popped inside. Lily leaned against Anna. Thomas sat straight back, but closer to Caleb than he had before. On the mantel, Caleb set the pocket watch where the light could find it. Its cracked face glowed in the flicker. The ticking folded itself into the murmur of flame and the slow, tired breathing of four people who had nowhere else to go. Strangers, sharing a fire, waiting to see if the world outside would let them keep it. Martha woke to the dry whisper of wool against her cheek. The blanket rasped when she moved, coarse threads scratching like sandpaper. Cold air seeped through the chinks in Caleb's cabin, thin as a knife blade. The fire in the stove muttered low. A single pot clicked as it cooled on the iron. Ben slept in the rocker by the stove, her boy's small hand still fisted in the blanket's edge. His breath was soft. The wind's was not. It whistled under the door, hunting gaps. Morning light pushed in pale and weak through the frost-clouded window. Martha eased herself up on the straw tick. The blanket dragged with her, heavy, smelling of smoke and horses and a life that wasn't hers. She pulled it tighter around her shoulders. The wool hissed in her ears. Same sound as last night. Graveyard wind. Fresh dirt freezing around her boots. A stranger rancher stepping out of the snow, laying this blanket over her shoulders without a word. Caleb stood now by the stove, broad back to her, hat already on. Steam curled from the tin cup in his hand. He didn't look at her. Didn't look at the boy. "Coffee'll bitter if you wait," he said. Rough voice. Dust and distance. Martha swung her feet to the floor. The boards shocked her bare soles, colder than stone. The floor creaked under her weight, cabin answering her like it didn't much care for company. She crossed to the stool, sat. The blanket slipped, then caught, then rasped again as she pulled it close. The sound filled the quiet between them. "That road to town," she said. Her voice felt like it belonged to someone braver. "Still passable?" Caleb sipped his coffee, set the cup down with a small, hollow ring. "If you call narrow and iced over, passable. I have to reach the bank." She stared at the knots in the table. "His wages. What's left? There's papers." The word tasted like iron. Debt. Foreclosure. The man behind the desk who'd already told her once the land was worth more than her husband's life. "We'll go after feed in the stock," Caleb said. No question in it. Just fact. She opened her mouth to protest, to say she'd walk, she'd find a neighbor, she'd manage. But another gust slid under the door, cold enough to sting her ankles. Ben coughed in his sleep. She swallowed the protest instead, nodded. The blanket rasped again when she rose. In the barn, breath showed white from horse and man. The saddle leather creaked. Harness rings chimed dull. Martha helped hitch the wagon, fingers numb inside borrowed gloves. Caleb watched her loop the traces. "Done this before," he said. "Teams don't ask as many questions as people," she answered. He almost smiled. Almost. The wagon rolled out onto the white road, wheels crunching through old ruts. The cold laid itself across her face, sharp and steady. She slid closer to Ben on the seat, wrapping the blanket around them both. Wool rasped over rough boards. Ben pressed his cheek into her arm. "Ma," he murmured, "where's the road go now?" She watched the pale ribbon disappear into the trees. "Far enough," she said. "Maybe not as far as we thought." A bend in the trail tightened. The wagon tilted. One wheel skated on ice. Caleb's hands clamped on the reins, leather groaning. The gelding snorted, hooves slipping, then biting down. For a slow second, the world hung crooked. Ben sucked in a breath. Martha's fingers dug into the blanket, the sound of the wool loud in her ears. Then the wagon slapped back level. Snow shook loose from the branches above, pattering onto their shoulders. "We turn back?" she asked, heart thudding. Caleb didn't answer. He only set his jaw and kept the horse moving. The closer they came to town, the noisier the world grew. Boots on boardwalks, wagon wheels rattling over frozen mud, voices layered on voices, all of them sharp with cold. The blanket's whisper got lost in it. She missed it. Silly thing to miss. Martha slid down from the wagon, boots hitting the street hard. The bank sat squat and sure at the corner, red brick unbothered by winter. Inside, the air was warmer, not kinder. A stove ticked in the far corner, but the heat barely reached the front. The clerk behind the counter looked up, eyes small and pale. "Ms. Lane," he said. Always that tone, like her name was a problem to be solved. "I need to see Mr. Darnell," she said. Her fingers tightened on the blanket at her throat. "The account, my husband's wages, the homestead." Caleb stood a step behind her, hat low, silent, but his presence filled the little lobby. The clerk's gaze flicked to him, then back. "You were told," the man said, shuffling papers that didn't need shuffling. "Darnell's taken over the note. Your man died owing, not holding. There was a promise." Her voice shook once, then steadied. "He said the winter's work would clear it. He said we'd keep the house." The door to the back office opened. Mr. Darnell himself stepped out, vest snug, watch chain winking like a threat. He smiled, never reached his eyes. "Ms. Lane," he drawled, "I'm afraid promises don't thaw ice or fill ledgers." He let his gaze slide, just for a heartbeat, down the line of her worn dress, the blanket, the small shape of Ben by the stove. Land's worth more in the right hands. Safer, too. A silence dropped over the room. Even the stove seemed to stop ticking. Caleb shifted his weight once. Floorboards creaked loud under his boot. "Her man worked," Caleb said. "Snow or no snow, that count for anything in your books?" Darnell's mouth thinned. "My books count law, Mr. Ransom. Law and numbers, not sentiment." The words stung worse than the wind outside. Martha felt heat rise in her face, shame and fury tangled tight. She pictured the road again, stretching away, promising anything that wasn't this. "What happens to the house?" she asked. Darnell folded his hands. "You'll be notified, in writing." He glanced again at Ben. "Before Christmas, I expect." The threat sat there, plain as a pistol on a table. On the ride back, the world felt smaller, trees closer, sky lower, snow starting to spit from a gray lid of cloud. Ben leaned against her, drowsy from warmth and carriage sway. The blanket rasped as she pulled it higher around his ears. "He can't take it if I pay," she said. She didn't know who she was talking to. Maybe herself, maybe God, maybe the hard man driving the team. "Land's already half taken in his head," Caleb answered. "That's the worst part." She looked sideways at him. "You think I should give up? I think you and that boy need 4 walls that ain't in another man's sights." He kept his eyes on the road. "My bunkhouse is empty. House could use a woman's hand. You can work. You can stay till things clear. Till he puts his notice on my door," she said. He didn't argue. Didn't make it pretty. The gelding's breath roared white in the cold. Far off, something cracked like a gunshot. Martha flinched. Caleb's head snapped toward the sound, then relaxed when no echo followed. "Tree giving up," he said. "Snow's heavy this year." By the time they reached the ranch, evening had settled low and blue. The cabin windows glowed faintly, a smear of gold in the dark. Inside, the fire popped and spat. Ben's boots fluttered across the floor as he chased the warmth. Martha hung their wet shawls, fingers clumsy but moving. The blanket slid from her shoulders as she worked. It fell in a soft heap by the stove, folding over itself with that same dry whisper. She stared at it, at the way it belonged there more than she did. "Leave it," Caleb said quietly. "Gets more use on you than on a peg." "Maybe I shouldn't," she answered. "If I stay wrapped in other folks' things, I'll forget how to stand on my own." "You came all this way on your own," he said. "That's not easy road." Ben laughed then, high and sudden, at some small joke only the fire and his imagination knew. The sound filled the cabin, bouncing off log and tin and bone. It pushed the silence back a little, just a little. Another gust hit the door, making it shudder in its frame. For a heartbeat, Martha saw it. Her own door, her own house. Paper tacked to the boards, ink black as crow wings. She stepped to the threshold and set her hand on the latch. The wood was cold, rough under her palm. She pulled it shut against the wind. The cabin sighed. The blanket rustled as she picked it up. This time, when she wrapped it around her shoulders, she did not stand by the door. She crossed the room, past the table, past the rocker where Ben had curled, to the empty chair by the stove. She sat. The wool whispered once more as it settled, and for the first time since the graveyard, the sound felt a little less like morning, a little more like the beginning of a road she had not planned to take. Morning settled slow over the cabin, gray first, then a faint wash of pale gold creeping across the table. Caleb Rourke stood by the stove, turning a skillet of cornmeal mush with the back of a spoon. The fire hissed where melted snow dripped from his coat, each drop landing like a soft rebuke for being out in the cold too long. Behind him, Martha moved quietly, not timid, just careful, like someone trying not to break the peace she'd borrowed for the night. Ben and Lily still slept in their blanket nest by the hearth. 2 small lumps under wool, 2 small breaths rising and falling. The cabin felt warmer with them in it, warmer and somehow more dangerous. Caleb poured mush into tin bowls. Steam lifted. The smell of browned edges and butter scraped from the last of the crock drifted into the room. Martha joined him at the table. Her hair was pinned this time, her sleeves rolled, her hands steady, if colder than the morning frost outside. They sat, across from each other. One table, two shadows stretched long across the planks. She murmured a quiet thank you. He answered with a nod. Talking too much this early felt like waking a sleeping dog. She took a bite, winced at the heat. He pretended not to see. Outside, a gust shuddered the cabin wall hard enough to rattle the window. Snowfall thickened, whispering across the panes like it was looking for a way in. Martha's spoon paused. That flinch again, quick, buried, like someone expecting a knock that meant trouble. "You sleep at all?" Caleb asked. "A little." Her eyes drifted to the children. They slept warm. He almost said, "You could have too." But it wasn't his place. Not yet. Ben stirred. Lily followed, rubbing sleep from her face. They stumbled to the table and sat close to their mother, bowls sliding toward small hands. The cabin filled with sound, spoons tapping tin, Lily's small humming. Ben whispered, reading the embossing on the bowls. A house of noise again. Unexpected noise. Good noise. Caleb set his coffee down, watched the three of them eat. He didn't try to hide it, didn't know how. Martha felt his gaze and shifted. Not uncomfortable, not flattered, just measuring, like she didn't quite trust the luck of a warm meal and a man who wasn't demanding anything. Her hand brushed the pocket watch on the table. Tick. The sound felt louder with all the silence between the beats. A broken rhythm, unsteady, out of place in a room that had just begun to breathe again. "What's wrong with the watch?" Caleb asked. She stiffened. "Don't know. You act like you do." She didn't answer. Her knuckles went white around the chain. Another gust bowed the window. A reminder of the world outside, the world waiting with problems bigger than a friendly table and a half-warm stove. Ben slurred his mush too fast, coughed, almost spilled his bowl. Martha steadied it with one hand, pressed his back with the other. Her touch was quick and sure, like she'd done this while running, while hiding, while carrying more fear than food. Caleb rose and fetched a ladle of warm water. "Slow down," he said. Thomas nodded, embarrassed. The room steadied again, steam curling, fire popping. Martha finished eating and set her bowl aside. She stood, reached for the rag on the counter, and began wiping the table. Slow, methodical strokes, like she was scrubbing out a history she didn't want carried forward. "You don't have to do that," Caleb said. "I know." But she kept wiping, the cloth squeaking faintly against worn pine. Ben and Lily brought their bowls up next. Martha cleaned until every surface had a dull shine of effort. She glanced toward the small shelf above the stove, where Caleb kept tools, a Bible, and a few things that hadn't been touched in years. One chair under that shelf sat pushed back. The dust on its seat was broken now by the outline of her hand from last night. Her touch left a mark in this house. That unsettled her. He could see it. Caleb opened the door to grab more wood. A blast of cold hit the room, sweeping through their ankles. Lily squealed and climbed onto the seat to escape the draft. Martha's instincts kicked fast. She reached to pull Lily's skirt from the splintered edge of the table. Her movements were too quick, like she expected danger from any angle. Caleb noticed, filed it away, not for prying, for protection. When he shut the door, the warmth held better. The fire picked up again. The stove hummed. The smell of breakfast lingered like a comfort they didn't know how to accept. Martha stepped back to the table, stood at the far side, hands resting on the chair, as if choosing whether she belonged at the table or watching it from a distance. "You and the children stay today," Caleb said. She frowned. "We'll work. We won't idle." "I know." He gestured to the storm outside. "But the road's icing worse. No reason to travel in it." Her eyes flicked to the watch. Tick, tick. That broken rhythm again. A reminder of unfinished business. "We need to get to town," she murmured. "And we will," he answered, "when this storm lets us." Ben tugged on her sleeve. "Ma, can we go outside later?" Her answer came out too sharp. "No." The boy froze. Caleb softened it for her. "Not today. Snow's crusted." cut skin to bone. Ben nodded, satisfied. Martha's shoulders eased. The room settled again. Warm breath, steady fire. One table, two families trying to decide if they were becoming one. The shadow she cast across the planks overlapped his. Two silhouettes, close but not touching, bound by the same light, the same cold outside, the same ticking on the table. The watch kept time, or tried to, and the house, for the first time in too many years, felt like it wasn't waiting to empty itself again. Snow had fallen steady through the night, leaving the ranch wrapped in a thick white hush. Caleb stepped onto the porch, boots sinking past the toe. His breath rose in slow clouds. Morning light stretched thin across the yard. For a moment, the world felt still, clean, almost safe. Then he saw the tracks, fresh, deep, a single horse, coming in from the east ridge, cutting across his property, then looping back out the way it came. Not wandering tracks, not a drifter's trail, a search pattern. He crouched, touched the edge of one print. Snow crumbled under his glove, still soft, not yet crusted. Whoever rode through had passed within the last hour. He rose slow, listening. The cold carried nothing but wind, but the unease stayed. Behind him, the cabin door creaked. Martha stepped out, blanket around her shoulders, hair still damp from washing. She followed his gaze. Her breath hitched. "That isn't yours," she whispered. "No." She swallowed, hard. Ben and Lily pushed past her, bouncing onto the porch. Ben pointed. "A rider. Maybe it's the postman." Martha pulled him back with a sharpness that surprised even her. "No." Ben blinked up at her, confused, hurt. Caleb stepped in, voice quiet. "Tracks are wrong for a postman. Wrong time of day, too." Martha's grip tightened on Ben's sleeve. Her knuckles whitened. "So they've found us." Caleb watched her, watched the truth settle over her like another layer of snow. He didn't say yes, didn't need to. The fear in her face confirmed what the tracks already told him. Inside, the cabin still held the warmth of the morning fire. He shepherded them all back in, shutting the cold out with a heavy thud. But the cold stayed in her eyes. She moved to the table, fingers trembling as they hovered over the pocket watch. Its cracked face caught the firelight, ticking stubbornly, unevenly, like a heart afraid of its next beat. Caleb poured water into the kettle, letting the clink of tin fill the silence. Outside, wind scraped against the house, the cry of it thin and sharp. Martha stared at the watch, then at the door, back at the watch again. Ben tugged her sleeve. "Ma, why someone out there?" She couldn't answer. Lily crawled into her lap, small hands cold. Martha wrapped the blanket around them both, hiding the trembling. Caleb sat across from her. "Tell me who you're running from." Her jaw clenched. "I'm not running." He shot her a look, flat, not unkind, just asking for honesty. Her defenses sagged. She exhaled. "They want the land," she said. "My husband's wages, the deed, all of it." Ben looked up sharply. "But Paul said the land was ours. He said we'd keep it." Martha touched his hair with shaking fingers. "He said a lot of things." The fire snapped in the stove, a loud, sharp crack. Martha flinched. Caleb didn't miss it. He leaned forward, voice low. "That rider, he tracking you?" She didn't answer with words, just one slow nod. The kettle began to simmer, its soft bubbling the only gentle sound left in the room. Caleb stood, pulled on his coat, grabbed his rifle. Ben's eyes widened. "You going out?" He nodded once. "Won't be long." Martha rose, panic tightening her breath. "Caleb, don't. If it's him, all the more reason." He stepped out into the white. The cold swallowed him quick. Silence after him, thick as wool. Martha paced to the window, blanket dragging behind her. Her breath fogged the glass as she scanned the yard, eyes flicking over the tracks, the tree line, the ridge beyond. Tick. The pocket watch sounded louder now, louder than the wind, louder than her heartbeat. Ben climbed onto a stool to see outside. Lily clung to her mother's skirts. Martha didn't move, didn't blink, just listened to the watch, to the wind, to the way the quiet outside seemed to lean toward the house, waiting. A crow called from the fence rail. harsh, a warning more than a song. Then, footsteps, crunching steady through snow. Martha gripped the edge of the table. The door opened. Caleb stepped inside, snow dusting his shoulders, rifle slung but ready. He shut the door slow. They weren't passing through, he said. Her breath stalled, froze. They were looking. Silence swallowed the room whole. The fire popped. Lily whimpered. The watch ticked on, stubborn as ever. Caleb met Martha's eyes. Calm, sharp, unmistakably certain. Whoever's after you, he said, they're closer than you thought. The wind rushed against the cabin again, harder than before, like a fist testing the strength of the walls. Snow lifted off the ridge in thin veils as the rider approached, a dark shape against a field of white, steady, unhurried, like a man who already believed the land beneath him belonged to his boot heel. Caleb saw him first. He stood near the gate, one hand resting on the post, pretending to check the latch. But his eyes never left the stranger drifting down the slope. A coat black as river rock, a brim pulled low, horse groomed too fine for winter riding. Not a wanderer, not a neighbor, a man on business. His business. Behind Caleb, the cabin door creaked open. Martha stepped out, blanket clutched tight, her breath fogged in short, frightened bursts. She froze when she saw the rider. Her fingers tightened around the wool until her knuckles went white. The pocket watch inside her coat ticked unevenly, a trembling heartbeat muffled beneath cloth. Inside, Caleb murmured. His voice didn't rise. Didn't have to. She didn't move, just stared at the man as if she'd seen a shadow step out of a grave. Ben and Lily peered from behind her legs. Lily's mittened hand tugged at her mother's skirt. A silent question, a silent fear. The rider reached the yard, pulled his horse to a slow, deliberate stop. Snow crunched under polished boots as he stepped down. He removed his hat, not out of politeness, out of confidence. A small gesture that said he didn't need wind or winter to respect him. Everything else already did. "Mornin', Rourke," the man said, brushing snow from his coat. His voice carried like cold iron, smooth on the surface, danger underneath. Caleb didn't answer, didn't offer his name. The man smiled anyway, as if conversation was a game he always won. "Fine property you've got here," he said. Some would say, underused. His gaze drifted to the cabin, to Martha, to the children. He didn't hide the linger in his eyes. Martha took a step back without meaning to. The boards groaned under her weight. The man's smile sharpened. "Ms. Lane," he said, "walking on another man's land these days?" Her breath caught. She gathered the blanket tighter. He noticed the motion, and his grin widened like he'd found something he'd misplaced. Caleb stepped forward, blocking his view of her. "You've come far to admire my yard," he said. The man chuckled. "Not far, just over the ridge. Your neighbor, more or less. Didn't know I had one. You do." Another smile. Amos Dre. The name hit Martha like a slap. She staggered once. Ben grabbed her hand. Caleb didn't turn, but he felt her fear like a shift in the wind. "Riding my fence doesn't make you my neighbor," Caleb said. "It does when the person I'm looking for took refuge on your land." His gaze slid past Caleb again, to Martha, then down to the pocket watch chain peeking from the fold of her coat. The man went still, subtle, but Caleb caught it, a flicker of recognition, then hatred, deep and practiced. "Well now," Dre whispered. "There it is." Martha shoved the watch deeper into her coat. Caleb placed his body fully between them. "You've had your look," Caleb said. "Best turn around." Dre dusted snow from his gloves, unbothered. "I'll be back," he said softly. Paperwork in hand, claims to settle, debts to collect. Ben tensed beside the door. Lily whimpered into Martha's skirt. Dre slipped his gloves on one finger at a time. "Don't trouble yourself, Rourke. I don't fault you for taking them in." A pause. "That woman's been a curse on every man who tried to help her." Caleb's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Silence sometimes struck harder than fists. Dre placed his hat back on. "Enjoy the calm," he added. "It won't last when I come back with the law." He swung into the saddle, turned his horse without haste. left the yard in the same slow, deliberate manner he'd entered it. Snow muffled the sound of hoofs until the ridge swallowed him whole. Martha sagged against the doorway. The blanket slipped from her shoulders. She didn't notice. Her hands were trembling too hard. The pocket watch ticked under her coat. Uneven, panicked, loud. Caleb closed the gate behind him, latched it tight. Then he looked at her, at the children, at the fear turning their breath shallow and thin. "Dre knows you're here," he said. The truth hung heavy in the winter air. Martha nodded once, eyes wet, voice breaking around the cold. "He won't stop," she whispered. Caleb stepped closer. His breath mingled with hers in the freezing air. "Then neither will I." Snow began falling again before noon. Small flakes at first, then thicker ones, heavy, slow, like the sky was lowering itself piece by piece. Caleb moved through the yard with deliberate steps, breath fogging the cold air. He checked the barn doors, latched windows, feed bins. Every hinge on the ranch seemed to hold its breath. Inside the cabin, Martha folded blankets with fast, nervous motions. Ben stacked kindling near the stove. Lily tied and untied her mittens, too restless to sit still. Silence pulsed between them, not peace, waiting. Caleb entered, boots thudding once before he stopped on the threshold. "Storm's coming in hard," he said, "and Dre with it." Martha's hands paused on the wool. Her shoulders tightened under her shawl. "What do we do?" she asked. Her voice barely cleared her throat. Caleb nodded toward the rifle hanging above the door. "You learn to shoot." Ben's head snapped up. Lily's too. Martha blinked. Fear flashed through her eyes. Then something steadier. Resolve. She nodded. They stepped outside, the cold slapping their faces with open palms. Wind combed the tall grass with long, icy fingers. Caleb placed the rifle in Martha's hands. The metal bit her skin. "Hold steady," he said. "Let the weight settle. Don't fight it." She lifted it, arms trembling. Snowflakes stuck to her lashes. He guided her stance with the lightest touch, his hand on her elbow. Her breath stuttered at the contact. "Breathe slow," he said. "Don't rush the trigger." She exhaled, pulled. The rifle cracked through the still air. Birds exploded from the trees. Lily flinched. Ben clapped his hands over his ears. Martha lowered the weapon, chest rising fast. Caleb leaned to check the post they'd aimed at. A clean mark, just left of center. "Good," he said. Simple, true. She didn't smile, but her shoulders eased a little. Wind pushed harder across the ridge, dragging a long, hollow whistle across the ranch. A sound that felt like a stranger calling a name he didn't deserve to know. They moved back inside. Caleb bolted the door behind them. The thong echoed through the cabin like a warning knuckle rapping wood. Martha hung the rifle carefully, fingers brushing the stock with new familiarity. Ben hovered near her. "Ma, are we in danger?" She knelt, took his hands. Her breath trembled, but her voice didn't. "We're together. That matters most." The stove hissed as the fresh log Caleb added caught flame. Warmth spread slow across the boards, pushing back the cold inch by inch. Martha sat at the table, pulled the pocket watch from her coat, laid it on the wood. Its broken tick fluttered unevenly. She stared at it for a long moment. Caleb watched her from across the room. "That thing's tied to all this," he said. She nodded. Her thumb brushed the crack in the glass. "I know." Thunder rumbled far off, not from the sky, from the ridge. Hooves, faint, distant, but coming closer. Caleb moved to the window, peered through the frost. Nothing visible yet, only the storm. But he could feel movement in the white, a pressure, an approach. "Ben," Caleb said, never looking away from the glass. "Fetch more water from the barrel." The boy obeyed, but the wind snatched the door from his hand when he stepped out. It slammed against the wall with a crack. Martha jolted upright. Caleb rushed out after him. Snow stung like needles. The barrel stood half frozen, lid rattling in the storm. Ben wrestled with it, arms shaking from cold. Caleb steadied it. "Easy," he said. "You're all right." They carried the bucket inside together, dumping it near the wash basin. Martha wrapped Ben in a blanket the moment he crossed the threshold. The watch ticked on the table, weak, uneven, a heartbeat fighting through fear. Caleb unrolled a map across the table, marked the ridge, marked the road, marked the fence line where Dre had crossed before. Martha studied it, hands pressed flat on the wood. Her shadow fell long across the map, crossing every mark Caleb made. "He won't stop," she said quietly. "Not until he takes everything." Caleb's jaw tightened. The fire popped behind them, sparks snapping like teeth. "Then we'll be ready when he comes," he said. Outside, the storm thickened. White swallowed the ridge. Wind smothered the trees. But inside the cabin, the fire burned hot. The door held firm, and the four of them stood closer than the cold could reach. The storm broke just after dawn. Not cleared, just broke. Wind died. Snow hung in the air like held breath. Caleb felt the change before he opened his eyes. A kind of listening quiet, a quiet that didn't belong to winter. He rose from his chair by the stove, checked the rifle, checked the latch, checked the children huddled beneath blankets. Martha stood at the window, shawl tight around her shoulders. She didn't turn when she spoke. "He's out there." Caleb stepped beside her. Beyond the frost, 3 riders moved across the white, slow, certain, headed straight for the cabin. Amos Dre rode in front, dark coat, dark horse, dark purpose. Caleb breathed once, deep, settling himself into the man he used to be, the one he'd buried years ago. Martha touched the pocket watch at her throat. The tick inside the casing was faint, uneven, trembling, like it knew this was its hour. "Get the children behind the table," Caleb said. His voice didn't rise, didn't strain, just landed steady, certain. Martha obeyed. Ben pulled Lily close, eyes wide but brave in the shadow of the oak table. Hoofbeats reached the porch, soft, heavy. Snow muffled them, but not enough to hide intention. Then a fist hit the door, hard, twice. Caleb opened it himself. Cold slammed against him. The wind behind Dre carried ice sharp as needles. Dre smiled, the kind of smile a wolf gives a fence that's too low. "Morning, Rourke," he said. "I brought the law." He lifted a folded paper, held it like a weapon. A sheriff's seal glared from the wax. 3 rifles aimed from horseback behind him. Caleb didn't look at the paper, didn't look at the guns. He watched Dre's eyes, because that's where the truth always sat. "You forged that," Caleb said. Dre's smile twitched, barely, but it twitched. "I've done no such thing," Dre said. "Now stand aside. Ms. Lane has debts to settle." From behind the table, the pocket watch ticked, loud, clear, a broken little heartbeat telling its truth. Martha stepped forward before Caleb could stop her. She held the watch out toward Dre. "This was my husband's," she said. "Found on him the night he died." Dre's face flickered again. His jaw pulsed. Caleb saw it, saw the lie crack, saw the fear beneath the coat. Martha pressed the watch into Caleb's palm. Her hand shook. "Open it," she whispered. Caleb snapped the backplate free. A folded paper slid into his hand. Old glue, old ink, a deed with her husband's signature. Her signature, a witness mark, and no mention of Dre. Caleb held it up. The men on horseback shifted, uncertain now, watching their employer sweat under the cold. "This is the law," Caleb said. "Yours is a lie." Dre's face flickered again. His jaw pulsed. Caleb saw it, saw the lie crack, saw the fear beneath the coat. Martha pressed the watch into Caleb's palm. Her hand shook. "Open it," she whispered. Caleb snapped the backplate free. A folded paper slid into his hand. Old glue, old ink, a deed with her husband's signature. Her signature, a witness mark, and no mention of Dre. Caleb held it up. The men on horseback shifted, uncertain now, watching their employer sweat under the cold. "This is the law," Caleb said. "Yours is a lie." Dre's composure shattered in an instant. He ripped his revolver free. "Shoot them," he snarled. The morning exploded. Snow jumped from the porch boards. Gunfire cracked the air wide open. The world went white, then red, then white again. Caleb shoved Martha to the ground, returned fire. 1 rider fell, hard. Another dove behind a stump, firing wild. Dre charged through the doorway. A bull in a coat, hat knocked off, face twisted. Caleb met him head on. Fists first, then shoulders, then rage. Dre slammed Caleb into the table. Ben screamed. Lily hit her face in her mother's dress. Caleb grabbed Dre's gun hand, forced it down. Snow and dirt smeared across the floor as they fought. The shot went off inches from Caleb's ear. The sound rang in his skull, metallic, final. Martha rose, grabbed the fallen rider's rifle, hands trembling but steady in purpose. She aimed, not at the man outside, at Dre. Let him go, she choked. Dre froze, breathing like a cornered beast. Caleb wrenched a revolver from his hand, threw him backward out the door. The last rider saw his employer fall and broke, spurred his horse and vanished into the trees. Silence washed over the yard, not peace, shock, breath. Caleb stepped into the snow. Dre lay on his back, eyes wide at the sky, chest heaving. "You're done," Caleb said. Dre reached for his fallen gun. Snow crunched under his glove. Caleb fired once, clean, final. The echo rolled across the ridge, slow, deep, then faded into the white. Martha appeared beside him, Ben and Lily clutching her coat. The watch ticked in her hand, steady now, as if freed from something. Caleb holstered his gun, looked at the family beside him, a family that had walked into his life in a storm and stayed long enough to fight for. He exhaled, steam rising from his breath, heat rising from his chest. "It's over," he said. Martha nodded, tears freezing at the corners of her eyes. "Then let's go home," she whispered. Snow still drifted in slow spirals when they returned to the cabin. The storm had quieted, but the quiet felt thin, fragile, like one breath could shatter it. Caleb shut the door behind them, bolted it. The latch clicked in the silence like a final nail driven true. Martha stood in the middle of the room, children pressed close at her sides. Her hands shook as she pulled the pocket watch from her coat. The cracked face gleamed in the firelight. Tick, uneven, but louder now, free of the weight it had carried. She placed it on the table, gently, like setting down a memory that still burned at the edges. Caleb moved closer, sat opposite her. They didn't speak for a long moment. The only sound was the fire cracking through the last of the morning's chill. Finally, Martha exhaled, long, unsteady. "I never understood why he hid it," she said, her voice thin as winter branches. Caleb waited, let the words come when they were ready. He'd grown distant those last months, quiet, always looking over our shoulders. "I thought it was grief, or pride." Her hand trembled toward the watch again. "Then one night he pressed this into my palm, told me to guard it, told me not to trust the man buying up properties in the valley." Caleb nodded once. "Dre," she swallowed hard. "Yes." Ben shifted beside her, wide eyes fixed on the watch as though it were alive. Martha opened the backplate again. The folded paper slid out soft as old leaves, edges worn, ink faded, but still readable. Caleb leaned in, not touching it, letting her hold the truth her husband left behind. "It's the real deed," she said. "Our claim, signed, witnessed, unbroken." Her voice cracked at that last word. Unbroken, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Caleb reached for the paper. She let him take it. His calloused fingers brushed hers, a brief contact, warm against the cold that clung to her bones. He spread the deed flat across the table. The ink shimmered in the firelight like a quiet promise. "Your husband wasn't running," Caleb said. "He was protecting you." Martha covered her mouth with her hand. A small sound escaped her, more breath than voice. Ben slid closer to her. Lily crawled into her lap. Martha pressed her cheek to her daughter's hair. Tears slid down her face, slow and hot. "He tried to tell me," she whispered, "and I didn't listen. I thought he'd lost hope." Caleb shook his head. "No. He left you a way forward, left you a truth Dre couldn't bury." She looked at him through her tears. "You saved us." He met her gaze and didn't look away. "You saved yourself. I just helped finish the fight." Outside, the wind shifted. no longer a threat, just winter being winter. Caleb picked up the watch again, listened. The tick was steadier now, not perfect, but steady. He handed it back to her. Martha closed her fingers around it, held it to her chest. "It's like he's speaking still," she murmured. That last message he couldn't say with words. Caleb nodded. "He said it right. You heard it when you needed to." The fire warmed the room, filling the cracks between the cold moments of the morning. Shadows softened on the walls. The long night inside them eased a little. Martha folded the deed, held it with both hands, not shaking this time. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice steadier, rooted, alive. Caleb glanced at Ben and Lily nestled at her side, then at the fire, then back to her. "Now," he said, "we rebuild the life he wanted you to have." The watch ticked in her hand, soft, certain, like it agreed. Winter settled differently after Dre's fall. Not kinder, just honest. Cold stayed cold, warmth stayed earned. But inside the cabin, the air shifted. Small things first. A second mug beside the coffee pot, 2 coats drying by the stove, children's boots in a crooked line near the door, life returning in quiet footprints. Caleb rose early each morning, stirring the fire back to life. The flames caught fast now, as if the house recognized it could breathe again. He listened to the rhythm of the room, the soft snore of Ben, Lily's sleep humming, Martha turning pages of the Bible she'd found on his shelf. And under it all, a steady tick. The pocket watch rested on the mantel, repaired, balanced, ticking a clean, even measure of time. Not a warning anymore, a promise. Martha joined him at the window one morning. She didn't speak at first, just watched the sky shift from pale blue to the soft gold of early sun. "He meant for us to stand somewhere safe," she murmured. "Somewhere solid." Caleb nodded. "That's what you have now." She looked at him then, a look not born of fear or dread or grief, just gratitude softened by something warmer. Behind them, the children stirred. Ben clattered a tin cup to the floor. Lily giggled. Noise filled the cabin, bright, clumsy, alive. Caleb didn't flinch from it anymore. Later, he walked the fence line with Ben. Snow crunched under their boots, sharp and satisfying. Ben carried a small hammer, oversized gloves, and the kind of determination only a boy trying to impress a man could hold. "Straighten that post," Caleb said. "Not too much. Let the ground tell you how far it'll go." Ben nodded, tongue caught between his teeth, tapping the wood with careful blows. A soft victory sound followed each one. Wind moved through the pines above them. Not a thread this time. A song, low, steady. Back at the cabin, Martha hung laundry near the stove. Warm air fogged the windows. The scent of soap and pine filled the room. Lily tried to fold a towel and ended up wearing it like a shawl. Martha smiled, a slow, real smile that reached her eyes. Caleb paused in the doorway and watched a moment, not intruding, just taking in the sight. A home, not his alone, not anymore. At supper, they gathered around the table. One table. 4 shadows, no longer stretched thin, no longer separate. The pocket watch ticked softly on the mantel, marking seconds that didn't feel like losses anymore. Snow fell outside, but the cabin glowed with stove heat and low laughter. Even the wind tapping the window sounded less like a warning, and more like a traveler passing by, checking on old friends. After the dishes were washed, after the children drifted off beneath quilts Martha had pieced together, Caleb stepped onto the porch. Fresh snow muffled the world. Stars glimmered hard and bright above the tree line. Martha joined him, shawl wrapped around her shoulders. Their breaths rose together, 2 warm clouds in the night. "Feels different," she said. "This winter." "It is." She leaned lightly against him. A quiet gesture, a gentle truth. Inside, the watch ticked again, soft, assured, like a heart choosing to keep going. Caleb looked at the cabin's glow spilling over the snow, at the footprints leading in and out, at the life stitched together in the middle of a storm. "A warmer winter," he said. Martha nodded. "It is now." If this story stirred a memory or two, saddle up with us again. Hit subscribe and help keep these old frontier tales alive. Out here, every name, every trail, every sunset still matters. So till we meet again, friend, keep your hat tipped to the past and your heart pointed west.